stack so much bread, my bank account go times 10, leaving all the haters confused. That's a MAHONE. What's up? It's Hector, aka DEFCON TCG, and I'm here to go over my run at Good Games, where I did end up getting the Psychic badge. I've been playing a little bit of fighting recently, but you know, Psychic's where the home's at, and I really do like this deck. I think it's the best deck. I think it's the best deck going into next format, and it just does whatever you want it to do, right? Like, take extra prizes, you get to, you know, snipe bench Pokemon, you get to set up multi-prize turns, you have beaters, you have the best draw Pokemon in the game. Like, deck's broken. I'll tell you about a couple of changes that I made. And the 3 cards that were added were the addition of Frillish, the addition of Pokepad, and the addition of Training Court. Now, I don't remember what I cut for the Pokepad, but I don't know, look at the Full Grip one, and then you'll see whatever I cut. I don't remember off the top of my head. But JC did come out for Frillish. The item lock is very useful. Kind of is like Gardevoir and Standard, where you get to go Frillish and then Monkey Dory, and like you're kind of just good to go, right? Like, broken combination of cards, right? Anything that works in Standard is going to be even better in GLC because the power level's a lot lower. So, you know what I mean? Might as well use it while we can, right? So, that's a phenomenal combo. And then also the Training Court, I cut Energy Retrieval for the Training Court. I wanted another Stadium just because it kind of seems like every deck wants to play multiple stadiums. So like RDT plays 4 stadiums, Water is now playing like that a 3rd stadium usually, and then Psychic now is playing 2 or 3 stadiums. I do maybe want to play around with some other stadiums. I think that maybe Tropical Beach could be good in the space of Mysterious Garden, but I don't want to give too much sauce away because I am probably going to be playing this deck for Full Grip. Spoilers. So whenever that 6K rolls back around, you will hopefully see me with another dub, another trophy. But yeah, I'm going to just get back into the video because that's what you're here for. All right, I'm going to put my face cam right here in the middle. I don't know if this is distracting, but I don't want it to obscure any of the information of the cards. So we're going to see how this goes. If this looks weird, I'll change it in the future. But round 1, I'm going to hit my buddy DeAndre. He's playing the Wo Chien deck, and I am playing the good old Psychic deck I just showed you. And I think this game is actually a really good game. Both of us kind of have awkward starts and kind of mid games. So right here, I get a pretty nice opening start here. I get the Boulder. It's very bulky. He's very big. The Boulder. And I'm doing a little bit of price checking here. I go for an Inkay and a Natu. I attach the Mystery Energy to my Iron Boulder, giving it a -2 retreat cost. At 3 retreat cost, is still a pretty big boy, but DeAndre looks at the top card of his deck with that Trekking Shoe, and it is going to be a Pokepad, I believe. And he's thinking about whether or not to get rid of it, but I think looks like he gets a Scoop Up Net off of that instead. His hand is pretty solid, though. He opens double Ball card, and he's able to tutor whatever Pokemon he wants out of his deck. So I think here he's going to end up grabbing. He's looking for, you know, doing a little price checking, see what's in his deck. With a deck like this, where you're going to be burning through it a lot, it definitely does matter a lot to be able to identify what pieces you have missing. So, unfortunately for me, DeAndre is going to be going for that Badoo right off the bat, which means I'm going to be locked out of my items, which are pretty important. I mean, they're items, right? The upside is Badoo only does have 30 HP, so the majority of the Pokemon in my deck can kill it. Goes for the Scoop Up Net, which is really good because he's going to get that Wo Chien out of the active, and he's going to go for the item lock there. And looking at my hand, it's pretty terrible. I don't really have anything going for me here, so I'm just going to slam the Iono, draw a brand new 6 cards, and it looks like I don't really have anything going for me here, right? Because my opponent's at 6 cards in hand, so I just kind of have to pass here on the 5 and kind of hope that, yeah, DeAndre's like, oh, you're not killing me. He's just like, no, dude, we were both at 6, and then I attached 1, so not able to get a knockout there, which would have been really nice. I could have probably prevented DeAndre from building his board a little bit more, but he's going to start with the Explorer's Guidance. It's going to allow him to mill 4 cards off the top of his deck and get 2. He's going to get that Evo Incense for the Grottle, and then Grottle's going to allow him to keep going with that Sun Drench Shell ability, and that is going to grab him a copy of Roselia, which evolves into the famous Roserade, a $30 reverse holo for some reason, and that's going to tutor whatever card he wants from his deck. And then he's going to Pokegear here, and the Pokegear is going to grab Elysian Determination, which is an insane rip for the following turn. So now DeAndre is going to be pretty set up going into this next turn. Gets the Acro Bike as well, and I think he's going to take the Silcoon, or it might be Cascoon. I have no idea. They look exactly the same to me. And then probably just another Itchy Pollen here. Yep, the U-turn board is going to go on the Roserade. That's probably going to stick there for the whole game. So here I kind of have to be careful on what I want to do, because I can Lily and try to build up my board more, which maybe is correct there, but it doesn't guarantee that I'm able to get the attack off. So here I played a little bit safer. I go for the Hex Maniac to stop the Grottle here, and it's going to stop the Roselia when it evolves into Roserade. So I'm going to just take the knockout of Badoo, but DeAndre's going to put it right back into play. So I think that's kind of like the goal of this grass deck, is kind of just to mill through the whole deck while item locking your opponent, and then Wu Chen can kind of do some silly stuff at the end of the game. So I do have a Mr. Mime in my deck, which can be searchable off this Buddy Pop, and if I'm ever allowed to play it. So DeAndre's going to go for the Pokestop here, and it's going to mill the Stadium, but it does grab him the Heavy Ball, which is nice. It's going to grab that little Wurmple out of the prize card. Milling the Stadium here is pretty bad. Now DeAndre's going to be pretty reliant on getting into something like Lucamine to be able to retrieve it. And I'm going to get Badooed again. But here I top deck the Curlia, which is really funny because I believe this game I prized my Ralts. So I'm just kind of looking like, bro. So I'm thinking here, all right, let me slam this Pokestop, and I mill the Malamar, which is pretty bad. I also mill U-turn board. That's going to remove a retreat out from my deck, which is pretty unfortunate. But adding that extra card to my hand is going to allow me to at least attach one card from my hand. I get the Ralts off the prizes there, which is pretty huge. That's going to add some draw support to my board. And here I'm just kind of hoping that DeAndre doesn't have a third way to get into Badoo. And so that Suicune has an ability that when you evolve, you get the Cascoon out of the deck, which is pretty neat. It's going to allow you to set up the Dustox and the Beautifly a little bit more consistently. Let's see here. The Grottle's just going to probably grab another Evolution Grass Pokemon. It's either going to be that Beautifly or the Dustox. Actually, it's going to be a Torterra here. So maybe DeAndre's looking to take a knockout on this turn. See the Roserade. Pretty telegraphed that the Roserade was in the hand because DeAndre did aggressively go for the Roselia. That's going to get whatever card he wants. He's going for the Raihan to Grottle, and then this Raihan's probably going to grab just another energy because he looks like that's what he's looking for. And I'd imagine, yep, just an energy, and then evolve into Torterra, and then this is going to be doing a lot of damage. DeAndre has 4 evolution Pokemon in play, so he's going to do 200. And then mill 3, just getting the VIP pass, a little bit unfortunate. And I think here I just look up what Dustox does because I'm like, bro, I have no idea what this card does. It's from Ascended Heroes, so I just wanted to make sure that I knew what it did. He had a 4-in-1, which usually at any GLC tournaments, no one cares if you play with foreign cards. It's kind of the upside of the format that you can kind of play these funny, silly, cool cards that, you know, you wouldn't get to normally play like a standard tournament. But the nice thing here is I can finally play my item cards after I've taken 2 prizes. So I'm sitting pretty nice here. Usually the Psychic deck is playing from behind, so the fact that I'm ahead here is pretty nice. Unfortunately for me, I am not going to be able to knock out this Torterra in one hit. A little bit too tall of a task. But there's a couple things I can do. And I'm going to start here with the Pokestop, which is going to mill me just 3 cards, which is pretty bad. And I milled 2 supporters that I would want to probably hit off of my Pokegear that I just played. But I'm getting the teammates, which is going to be just fine. It's going to allow me to do something this turn. So I had a couple thoughts in my head. So I'm like, okay, well, one, if I go for Frillish into the Iron Thorn, or the Iron Crown, Thorns, Boulder, the Boulder. If I can go into Iron Boulder plus Frillish, seems like a pretty good line for me as well. But I think here I'm just kind of eyeing up what I wanted to grab off of this. I think my initial thought was maybe I can go for Mimikyu this turn and then do like 100 damage, which is like fine chip, but it doesn't really do enough to where I'm like, it's like damage. So I think instead of rather doing 100, I'd rather just kind of set up like a goofy turn into my opponent, right? I can like use Blacephalon and just put a couple damage counters onto the board and then kind of set up myself for later. I attach the Dark here to Xatu. One, it's going to be a pivot, and also if I don't have to use it as a pivot, then I'll be able to set up a potential blindside play for later. So I'm going to go for my Blacephalon on the not the 3 prize turn. And I'm going to put 2 on the Active Torterra to put it in range of the Boulder, and then I'm going to throw 1 on Roserade and then 1 on the Cascoon. The 1 on Roserade is because I know that my opponent's already done the Scoop Up Net, so this is now a prime blindside target here. And then up on the top over here, like I said, I just didn't really have another good place to put it. It was probably correct to put it on the Wo Chien, so then that way I can hit it for the Blacephalon next turn to be able to just kill it in one hit, because this is going to be the DeAndre's main win condition against me. He's going to want to go Silent Lab and then take a 2 prize turn to get back into the game. And I just want to acknowledge how insane this was, right? If we go back a little bit, this only goes by 1 second, which is crazy. We're getting there, I promise. Okay, we're just gonna rewind this a little bit. All right, so DeAndre's gonna play, it's gonna be a Japanese card here, I'm pretty sure, but it's gonna be a full art copy of Clay. So Clay says you can look at the top 7 cards of your deck. Any items you find there, you can add to your hand. He's just explaining what the card does, because I have literally not seen this card ever, because the English one didn't have a full art. So you look at the top 7 cards of his deck. It's any item, and he's gonna flip 6 items and a grass energy on me. Like, how absolutely broken is that? So yeah, he gets a +6 there off his supporter, which is nuts. So it's really insane. It's gonna be able to, you know, mill that grass energy out of his deck, but it's also gonna get him now 7 items into his hand. He's going to use Revitalizer, and this is going to grab what here? Badoo and Dustox. Okay. So the Dustox is going to evolve from the Cascoon. He's going to want to just buff his guys up because he knows what's coming here is going to be the Blacephalon turn. And thankfully for me, I do have that copy of Lily's Determination in hand to hopefully build up a pretty big combo here. But DeAndre is going to play the rope, just kind of playing into the Blacephalon turn, which I think is smart. He's going to force me to just kind of give him one of my guys right here. So he's going to just retreat and knock out my Mr. Mime. So now my priority number 1 is going to be able to find a recovery card for Mr. Mime on the following turn. But considering my board is going to consist of Xatu, Kirlia, plus Lily's Determination, I'm pretty confident in the top 10 cards in my deck that I'll be able to get some sort of recovery card for the Mr. Mime. And then here I'm just kind of counting how many cards DeAndre has in deck to see how far away I am from the no-no zone where I'm going to just get bodied. So I go for the trade here first because I want to see if I can draw any cards that can thin out my deck a little bit quicker. And I do have the energy in hand already. I'm going to go for the Frillish bench here to just thin it out of the deck, which I think in here I should have probably gone for a Giratina. But I think me being greedy, I wanted to use the Giratina as a discard outlet. I want to discard the Tina later off my Kirlia to get the full effect. And I think here I should be going for... Okay, I go for... Think about going for the Psychic Recharge. I go to the Psychic Recharge for the Frillish in case I have to retreat it later. And then I'm just going to go for the Lily's Determination to draw 6 cards. And let's see what I get. So boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go for the Heavy Ball. Heavy Ball is going to grab the Mew. And my other Dark Energy sitting in the prizes there. A little bit unfortunate, but you know, not the worst thing ever. Let's see. Thinking about playing this Evo Incense just to burn it. But I end up, I think, just using Mysterious Treasure away on the Mew, and then I'm going to retreat into Frillish. Oh, I think DeAndre's on the 4 prize turn this turn. I think I lied. There's no reason I wouldn't go for Blacephalon. So I'm just sitting behind the Frillish so that DeAndre can't go for like a super crazy play, and then he's kind of forced to play into the Blacephalon for next turn. Because I think this turn he's at 4 prizes, so I don't mind if he gets ahead on the prize card. Yeah, he's just going to go for the knockout here, which is really nice for me. And then, yeah, now I'm just kind of on the Danger Zone turn. So let's see. I think my Gardevoir was, yeah, it was milled by the Pokestop, which is pretty unfortunate. But let's see. The rest of my hand's like kind of dead. So I'm just kind of hoping DeAndre doesn't really see that. I have a really weird turn here. Oh, well, let's get into the next clip. All right, I'm back now. I think the pause was because I had to change out the battery because my battery's about to die. This is why I always bring 2 batteries to locals. All right, so getting back into the game here. Yeah, DeAndre knocked out my Frillish, and then I have the Blacephalon here. So Blacephalon's going to do some nice Blacephalon-y things, and he's going to blow up something on DeAndre's board, which unfortunately it's not going to be a multi-prize turn because a lot of the grass Pokemon do have a high HP because generally they are like stage 1s and stage 2s. But I'm just taking the opportunity here to knock out the Wo-Chien because I do not want DeAndre to blow up my board. But I do want to bench the Mr. Mime just in case he has something funny in the hand that can still kind of power it up. Like I saw the Cherim earlier, I believe. And there's the Cherubi coming down, which is 40 HP, so it's nice. It is definitely a really nice thing for DeAndre to kill it for me so that... Or to kill the Blacephalon this turn so that I'm not incentivized to like rebench the Blacephalon to knock out the Cherubi just because it doesn't have a lot of HP. And this Dustox has an ability. This is one turn you can flip a coin. If heads, you put an energy attached to your opponent's active back in their hand, which I think maybe is like a fine line to go for eventually. Psychic Pokemon are kind of fragile where if you're not like smacking into them, then it's hard for this deck specifically to kind of like recover from it. So now DeAndre goes to 3 prizes, and I'm also at 3 prizes. And the game is definitely a lot closer than it seems, especially with my hand being a little bit dead here. And I don't think there's a way for me to get to the not to play on this specific turn. And I didn't really want to do it anyway because it gets rid of one of my draw cards. And if I go to 1 prize on it, then my opponent's Iono and Ends are going to be a lot more punishing. So I think this turn I get hexed by DeAndre and then KO'd. So I'm just kind of thinking of like what my best option is here, because I think like this turn I was like, oh my god, the game is so cooked. And I just have to think of like an outside of the box way to potentially buy a turn back. But I think here I'm debating between using the Cybolt to paralyze DeAndre's Torterra on a coin flip, or going for the Mind Bend, which is guaranteed damage. But also if DeAndre flips tails, then I'm like just automatically back into the game, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, this Torterra is going to get confused. And unfortunately for DeAndre, I think his deck kind of works in the same way, where he's kind of relying on his opponent to KO the active so that they can go into their new threat. Torterra has 4 retreat. That's a big boy. And I'm pretty sure DeAndre's float stone is already gone. I think he like milled it away. So there's a timer ball. It's just going to get failed. But you actually cannot play a search card with any cards in the deck. So DeAndre is going to use Palpad to put 2 supporters back into the deck, and then fail all of these cards to kind of thin his deck out a little bit more. And it's an awkward spot from DeAndre because he doesn't really have a great follow-up. Aside from, you know, potentially just flipping heads here. If he flips tails, like I'm automatically back into the game. Because then instead of DeAndre going to 1 prize, he'll still be at 2. And then I can take a knockout into Torterra while starting to kind of set up more damage on the board. And I can keep this Monkey Dory potentially alive. So fortunately for me, DeAndre does flip the tails there and is going to go to 130 damage here. So now I can kind of start just accelerating. I don't really want to use the Giratina to knock out Torterra just because it has a lot of damage built up on it. I kind of want to cheese knock it out later with like a potential TM. So on the off chance DeAndre plays something like a Mallow and Lana, or he plays like Turo maybe, then I get to leave 2 blindside targets in play here. So I'm just kind of thinking through my turn. I'm looking at my discard pile like, okay, what is my best course of action here? Do I go for the Giratina onto the Torterra, or do I have like a more meaningful play here? I think I'm still holding that Evo Incense. I think I'm going to just trade it away here. And I get the Float Stone, which I don't think I end up attaching this turn. And I mean, with this hand, it doesn't look like I have too much going on. I could just use the Psychic Recharge to attach an energy to Mr. Mime. That way, if my Monkey Dory is KO'd here, then I have a backup attacker. Or not a backup attacker. Well, I guess he could attack, but it's at least a backup pivot at the absolute worst. And I think I end up going for the N here just to kind of reset DeAndre's hand, which doesn't matter too much as he has a Beautifly in play. So if you don't know what Beautifly does, Beautifly is just draw until you have 6 cards in the hand. And let's see, I get Scoop Up Net and Counter Energy here, which Counter Energy is pretty solid here. I thought about using it, but then we both go to 2. And I think I just have to go for a blindside play on the following turn to win the game anyway. So I think this turn it was probably correct to not even use the Giratina ability. And I actually just go for the Tina, which I think is fine here. I can put 4 damage counters on one of my Pokemon. And then, yeah, now my Monkey Dory has 4 damage counters on it, so I can move some more damage counters over on the following turn. But yeah, I attach the capture energy, or not the capture, the counter energy to Giratina. So that's going to allow me to attack with my 3 energy attack to be able to take a knockout into Torterra, which feels a little bit suboptimal, but I think the damage on the Monkey Dory to be able to move over later is like fine enough where it's worth it to kind of take like that weak attack into the knockout or into the opponent's active. And I think Dre just Hex Maniacs me here again, which is really annoying. And so Dre's just going to go for 100 damage here. So I take 100 and then 10 from the poison. And then I flip tails, so I am now asleep and I'm poisoned. I'm going to just draw for turn. And I think my goal is to just kind of get a blindside off because that's just how I win the game. So if I pass into DeAndre's turn, I'm going to go to 120, and then he passes back into my turn, and then I go to dead. So then my Giratina is going to go back. So I just pass here. I don't have any abilities. I don't really have anything going on. And Giratina is going to die during the end of the turn anyway. And yeah, just kind of thinking about like, oh, could I have played this differently? Like, what could I possibly do to not lose the game? Because I think he's scared. He knows like, oh, I can go for the blindside play, but I think he only has one card in the deck. So he has to find his own win condition on this turn without decking out. But I think he might have 2 cards in the deck, but I'm pretty sure it's only 1, because I think I distinctly remember like, oh no, he's only got 1 card left in his deck. So I don't know how he wins the game with 1 card in deck and 2 prizes without using something cheese like Wo Qian. And there he's back. So here I was kind of waiting to see like the Silent Lab plus the Wo Qian. We're actually going to see a retreat and a Bidoof knockout, which is pretty crazy. And then I'm just going to draw for turn. And I think I end up piecing together the KO here. I draw the Guzma, which is going to be the game-ending card here, I believe. I'm just kind of thinking it through, but I do have game in the hand. Just kind of seeing how I work through it here. I'm thinking, okay, I have to take 2 prizes this turn. My Monkey Dory can move 3 damage counters over to the Bidoof, but I still need to take another prize card this following turn. So I go for the Guzma onto the Roserade, and then I'm going to retreat using my Tina's Floatstone, and then I'm going to Mind Bend the Roserade for knockout, and that is going to be 1-0 at Good Games. Alright, now my next round is going to be against Colorless Control, and I'm going to speed this one up a lot more because the match is kind of uneventful in the fact that a lot does happen, but it's a lot of kind of nothing, I guess. So my plan into this matchup is kind of use my Frillish to just be Frillish, right? It's going to item lock my opponent, and it's going to be super annoying, and it's going to prevent them from playing the game, which, funnily enough, is the goal of Control, is kind of just run you out of resources infinitely. And oh, excuse me, I actually have a GLC tier list video that I'm going to be releasing soon. I want to get a feature from Tyler Matthews on there because he's my GOAT and one of the best GLC players ever. And that's my dog. So he's NFB with me. So we're going to be probably bringing you that, guys, soon, because so you can hear us argue and yell about that. So pretty nice opening turn here. You get the Fan Rotom, bang, bang, some more Pokemon down. And my goal here is I'm thinking, okay, well, I can't bench Malamar because it's got 2 retreat costs, but I think it is worth it to bench the Ralts that can evolve into Kirlia to net me cards, that can eventually evolve into Gardevoir to also get me cards, that can also be an attacker, so you can't really trap it. Same thing with the Natu into the Xatu. And I also thought, like, potentially throughout the game, the Natu plus Blindside could potentially just win me the game as well. So I thought these guys were all worth setting up. And then the Mimikyu can also copy my opponent's Ursaluna. That adds 2 cards from the discard pile to the hand. So I can kind of go infinite resource for infinite resource. So, like, this is almost an ideal board. The only other 2 things I'd like to have down are Tina plus Monkey Dory. That way, while I'm approaching this matchup right, I can kind of go like, okay, I can hit you for 130, but then also move 3 damage counters over a turn with Monkey. But I can also use my Giratina to like slowly kill itself, so I can force my opponent to take prizes and then go for like an N or an Iono later in the game. So that was like the 2 strategies that I kind of thought of at the beginning of the game. So kind of just seeing my opponent burn through their deck, and I think at some point during either this turn or the turn before, I check my opponent's discard pile because they do not have a lot of like resources left. I think they used a Stretcher and they used a Rescue Carrier. So I think here I would have liked to see the Bunnelby put the Ursaluna back on top of the deck so that the infinite loop could have started happening. I think the early mills here are a little bit too aggressive, and I don't think they had anything super consequential on this turn. I think it was a Nest Ball and a Vessel, which the Vessel hurts a lot because I actually would have liked to use it to be able to get some more stuff back into my hand. I go for the N here. I just kind of want to reset my hand and potentially get some of these evolutions down. I play the Training Court. The Training Court is just going to allow me to kind of loop some energy. Just hoping my opponent doesn't have an annoying Stadium to bump it like sooner than later. But see, the Gladion gets played here. Not sure. I don't think I can see what my opponent's grabbing off the prize card here. But let's see. There's a Pidgey that's more than likely... Oh, there you go. Never mind. Right to the Pidgeotto. So then, yeah, now the draw cards are all here. And there's a caption going to come down that's not going to grab anything out of the deck, I believe. I think it just gets failed. And then, yep, a mill for 2, which I think hits nothing super consequential again. And then I'm just going to go for the Frillish. I'm just going to keep this item lock going forever and ever until either I win the game or my opponent runs out of resources. Because look at my opponent's discard pile. There is an Ursaluna, and then there's like 4 recovery cards. So there's not a lot of ways to return the Ursaluna back to the hand. So if I can prevent my opponent from getting to the infinite loop, I think I just win off of resources. Like eventually I can just click Frillish until I win the game, right? So I finally get to the Xatu here. You're going to see why Training Court was absolutely the MVP in this matchup. Is that if my opponent ever wants to use like a Guzma or a Boss to bring up one of my guys, I can retreat it, use a Training Court, put the Psychic back in my hand, and then use the Xatu to draw 2 more cards. So we'll see here. I think my opponent does end up doing something pretty nasty here where the triple gets attached and then also the Luxurious Cape to make this Ursaring pretty thick. And at 240 HP, it's definitely something tough to deal with. And even though I'm at 4 prizes, this is a 2 prizer now. It's still going to be tough to be able to get through it. And yeah, knocking out the Frillish is going to be pretty annoying here. But I think I get the teammates off of the Ace Trainer, which is pretty good. Which I think just allows me to kind of go back into the item lock, which is going to be my main goal throughout this game, is just kind of keep the item lock down until I'm able to get into like the Giratina plus Monkey Dory stuff. But also I can potentially force my opponent to go to the 3 prize turn, and then I can start using my Blacephalon to pick apart their board, because I figure there's only a finite amount of special energy that can be attached to this Ursaluna or the Ursaring before my opponent's not able to really get any like meaningful attacks in, right? So the ignition energy is gone, the triple energy is gone, and now yeah, see, like this Guzma is like probably their best play here, just because they aren't able to like they're trying to prevent my Xatu from retreating, so my Frillish can come back into the active so that I can keep the item lock going. The only problem is everything on my board has 1 retreat cost, and I do have Training Court in play, so the chances of me getting out of the active are super high. But I think from here, I would have liked to maybe see the Fan Rotom bring up Ralts and then take a knockout here, because I think at this point in the game, you're either hoping that you're able to, I guess my opponent knows their prize cards, maybe they know none of them are useful, so that's probably fine. But I don't know. I think maybe at this point in the game, you're maybe trying to go for the prize race. I guess we are tied, and maybe Control doesn't have enough juice for it. But obviously, I don't know my opponent's list that well. But I think maybe just even the damage into the Frillish would have been better. But maybe there's not a way to retreat Ursaluna because it's pretty fat. I definitely would have liked to just see the 70 damage here, just to maybe knock out the Xatu eventually. Like if you get Boss's Order and knock out Xatu later, that's pretty good. Because I don't know if my opponent knows I have access to Monkey Dory. I think here I'm debating on what to do, and I just go for a Gloom, and I'm just kind of waiting to draw into Monkey Dory. That is like my play here. So I'm able to start putting damage back on the opponent's board. It's going to be very rough for them to do anything because I can start threatening multi-prize turns. Thankfully, Frillish does live this attack from the Fan Rotom. I think at this point my hand is like a bunch of really good cards, but I think it also includes like Rescue Stretcher plus Tulip. So it's something, I'm at a point in the game where like I don't want to reset my hand, because if I do, then I won't have access to as many Frillish because I have all the recovery cards I want in my hand. Yep, and I go for the Night Stretcher here. I go for the Training Court to get back Frillish, and the item lock is back on. So very exciting gameplay here. Go for the Heavy Ball, and I'm not going to grab the Mew because I was scared of something like an Erica's Hospitality that came down. So I just left the Mew in the prize card. It serves me no purpose here, and I think my opponent was about to deck out. So the Lily's Determination comes down here to be able to reset the hand. And as you can see in the top left here, maybe you can't see it, I have some dice up here, and I'm keeping track of how many cards my opponent has in hand and in deck, because I need to know how many turns I have until I win the game. And with I finally get the Monkey Dory down, but I actually don't think I get a Dark Energy into play this turn, which is pretty unfortunate. But I am able to use my Frillish to knock out the Fan Rotom, and I can potentially force out a last special energy from my opponent as well onto the Ursaring to be able to knock out the Frillish for the first attack, which I think does 40 damage. But I actually do rep the Dark Energy off of the Clairvoyant Sense, which is nice. I'm able to put 30 damage on Pidgeotto, which is going to be very nice to potentially pair with a Blacephalon for this turn. But the Cheryl is put down, and Cheryl's going to ruin my plan there. And then, yeah, that is pretty annoying because I was going to be able to knock out the Pidgeotto and the Cinccino that turn. And I think that pretty much just locks the game up for me. I can put 3 on Pidgeotto and 9 on Cinccino, double knockout, go to 2 prize cards, and then I just have to knock out the Ursaring for game. So here I'm debating on whether or not I should break the item lock because I don't want my opponent to start going crazy on me. But it is the 3 prize turn, so I decide to put down the demon himself, big Blacephalon, big Firework Bomb. And yeah, I'm going to grab this Mr. Mime out of the deck because I'm going to play an Iono here. And I do not want to draw Mr. Mime, so I'm going to throw him at the bottom of the deck. And then it also makes me not lose something like an Erica's Hospitality that I was talking about earlier. It's not something that I knew my opponent played, but there's always the possibility. And yeah, here I'm going to start setting up my Giratina as well, so I can start going for that 130 damage into my opponent. So now I have the ideal board I think I want against Control. And I still have access to Guzma, and I still have access to my Scoop Up Net, and I believe I still have access to Float Stones, so I have a lot of ways to retreat. So unless my opponent's going to use a Corner Mon, I'm in a pretty good spot here. And yeah, I'm going to use the Fireworks Bomb here to knock out the Pidgeotto. So I think my logic here behind knocking out Pidgeotto and not Cinccino is Cinccino's going to cycle through the deck, yes, but you're always going to lose a card, and you're going to get 2 random cards. At least with the Pidgeotto, you're looking at the top 2. You can get the cards you want, so I think that's a little bit more desirable than 2 random cards. But I don't know. Cinccino also just filter out the deck, so I don't know which one is correct there. But I still kill the other one on the following turn because I'm here assuming that my opponent doesn't have any more energy in their deck to be able to attack. There might be a Twin Energy in the deck. Or not Twin Energy. What is the double turbo energy? Yeah, double turbo energy. Maybe it's double turbo energy to be able to whap down me again, which would unfortunately be exact knockout. But we see the Scoop Up Net here, and then my opponent can't put down that Pokemon again. Otherwise, the Minccino is just going to get KO'd by the Blacephalon. So it forces my opponent not to do that, or not to put it back down. And then the Pal Pad's going to come down, just kind of resetting some more cards in my opponent's deck. Those are going to get shuffled, but again, from here, I'm in a pretty good spot where it's like, okay, if my opponent is not going to be able to take a knockout, they can't slash me, otherwise I get to move the damage back. I'm in a pretty good spot here, so now I can use my Blacephalon again, so I can take the knockout into the Ditto and put the rest on the Ursaring. So now my opponent can't bench any more Pokemon unless they take a knockout on a Blacephalon. But then on this following turn, I'm pretty set up to start attacking with Giratina. My opponent passes and I put the 12 on it. And then I think my opponent goes for the Guzma onto my Kirlia. And then I just kind of line up my deck. I think here I play a Pokepad. I go, okay, I have Pokepad. I'm going to use the Pokepad to look through my deck and say, okay, I do have the retreat, and I go for the U-turn board, and that is going to be game on the second game here at Good Games. All right, let's get it. We're going into round 3 here, and I'm going to be hitting a deck from the past that I think actually is pretty solid. I think that Sandygast, like, spread can be very good into decks that have, like, no texture counters for it. Like, my deck specifically, it's pretty unfortunate for my opponent that, like, I have Mr. Mime and I have Monkey Dory, but this game actually ends up being very close. I think my opponent played this pretty well. There's one thing they do kind of at the end of the game that is, like, it lowers his chance from winning from, like, an even chance to, like, it puts it, like, 80% in my favor that I win. So those little margins can definitely change the game a lot. And you know what? You know what's messed up is I think this whole tournament I did not use my Mew until this game. I only get to use it like 1 or 2 times before it just like dies. So that's pretty messed up here. But I asked my opponent, I'm like, do you want to just look at our prizes like gentlemen's, like, because he's like he like plays the professor's letter and then starts looking at his prizes, and I'm like, bro, can we just like look? Like, it's not that deep. It's, you know what I mean, GLC. Like, so he's gonna go over level ball for the Tyrogue, and Tyrogue's pretty neat. It has an ability that says once per turn, flip a coin. If heads, then one of your opponent's Pokemon takes 3 damage, which could be really bad if there's 2 heads in a row on the Mew. But I get pretty lucky here, and there is nothing on my Mew. So I use the Pokepad here. I'm looking at my hand. I do have that Malamar. I'm going to be using it to grab a Mew. And then I'm going to play Fog Crystal, grab a copy of Inkay. And here I actually don't elect to use the Iono that's in my hand, just because I do have the... Actually, I don't really know if there's a reason not to use the... You don't use the Iono here because my opponent doesn't do anything. But I think it's probably right there just to use the Iono to further my board, because I'd probably have to play the Iono at the start of my opponent's next turn anyway. So there's the Guzma here, and this is just going to grab whatever my opponent wants, because, you know what I mean, Big Guzma, the card's broken, searches the best cards in the game, a Stadium, a Special Energy, and a Tool. So you're going to see the Muscle Band, a Brooklet Hill, and then a Special Energy. Probably going to be something either like a Strong Energy is what I expected, or in this deck specifically, I guess maybe you don't have Dogi, so there's not really a need for something like a Aurora Energy. So it's actually going to be a Tinglu, and then Tinglu is going to get the Muscle Band attached to it as well, so it can actually put damage on my Mew, because otherwise it is going to resist. So this turn, it is definitely priority number 1 that I'm going to be able to evolve my Mew. And here, unfortunately, I flip the top 7 cards of my deck. I get a useless supporter, and I flip a bunch of really good item cards, which is unfortunate, because now my, you know, if my Mew were to hit one of those good cards, I'd be pretty sad. So I go for the D-Valley here, and then I go for the Iono. I just want to save the Mew for a potential out to an item after using my Iono. So I'm going to thin my deck here of some cards. I'm going to go for the Level Ball to get the Curlia. And I think here I probably should have just used the Nest Ball as well. Yeah, I think... Okay, I actually trade the Nest Ball, which I think might be a misplay. I think Nest Ball there should have probably grabbed a copy of Mr. Mime, so that I could have just had it immediately. I'm not really sure what I was cooking here. So I think that's definitely a misplay on my end, but I do get a copy of Xatu here. So I'm going to use the Scoop Up Nets with the Mew back into my hand, evolve into Xatu, and then I have the same amount of cards as my opponent, so I'm going to be able to use that Iron Boulder for a KO, while also taking the Mew off my board, which is pretty good. So Mew gets its 2 uses. The Scoop Up Net there is pretty good. It's allowing me to retreat out of my boulder, or retreat into my boulder. And yeah, I think I should have definitely used that Nest Ball to grab a Mr. Mime. I think maybe I was just like, what are the chances of my opponent having like another way to Tinglu me the next turn? But silly me, they do have it. So yeah, there is a Raihan. Raihan's going to be used for Machoke there, and Machoke just kind of shuts down my whole deck. It's going to prevent any effective attacks or abilities to put any damage on my opponent's bench Pokemon, which is like literally the whole point of my deck. So I'm actually going to be able to see a pretty cool combo here of the Focus Sash plus the PPP to be able to get rid of the Valley. But I am holding that big old Field Blower in my hand, which is pretty nice. It's going to be able to get rid of that Focus Sash, so I can be able to knock out my opponent's Pokemon in one hit. But I actually have more dastardly plans against this Machoke. Now, on this turn, I'm going to use my Quick Ball and get rid of my Mew. I get rid of Mimikyu there, which I think maybe is incorrect. I probably should have got rid of the Mew, because I think Mew is probably less useful. There might be use for the Mimikyu on a later turn. I'm going to get the Mr. Mime, I'm going to bench the Mew. Okay, I see it. I guess I go for the Guzma here to kind of extend my turn. I use it to grab the Vessel, which Vessel's very good here. I'm going to use it to get rid of the Marnie, because again, I'm not really wanting to reset my opponent's hand at this point. And now I can kind of go for my own shenanigans here with my Clairvoyant Sense. I'm just debating here if I want to go for the Adjusted Horn or if I want to go for a Mind Bend on this turn. So I'm thinking, and yeah, I'm just going to go for the safe play here with the Boulder. So I got 6 cards in my hand, and my opponent, I think they have 2. So I think maybe I messed this up. Okay, I go for the Retreat into the Boulder. And then I go for the Field Blower to get rid of my Stadium and my opponent's Focus Sash. Okay, I played that turn crazy. Oh, hold up, kind of nice. So I recovered from a pretty bad misplay here, allowing my opponent to get a bunch more damage counters on my board. And I get a cool little Field Blower play here, where I get rid of my own Stadium and my opponent's Focus Sash to be able to kill the Tinglu again. So, yeah, the killed Tinglu counter is now at 2. So now my opponent's going to be able to Lily into 8 cards, which is pretty scary. And the Stadium Nav here is going to hit 2 Stadiums. Oh my god. I didn't play that card at NAIC 2019 because I always flip tails in this card. That's why I played Red's Challenge, because I could just do whatever I wanted, search whatever card I wanted. So that was really nice. And my opponent's going to get that bench Riolu off here. So I know Lucario is going to be coming. That card is very scary, because it's always going to take a knockout in return. Thankfully, I'm playing a Psychic deck, so I'll be able to knock it out on one hit back. But there's the big guy, Big Sandy Gas is going to come down here. And Tinglu's going to come down with the copy of Silent Lab. And Silent Lab is going to knock out my Kirlia here and then put some damage counters on a bunch of my guys. So pretty unfortunate turn for me there, that now the Silent Lab is going to negate the ability of my Mr. Mime, put a bunch of damage counters on my board, which is pretty scary to go up against. But I'm thinking, okay, maybe if I knock out Mr. Mime again, right? Maybe, or this Tinglu again, maybe it can't get, you know, recurred for a fourth time. I'm going to go for the Clairvoyant Sense here onto my Mew, as now it is going to be a pivot. And I'm just kind of looking at my discard pile, seeing what is going to be my best play here. Thinking I got 6 cards in hand. My opponent's got 6 cards in hand. I think I just settle here for the KO. I'm just kind of thinking if there's any other extensions I can do on this turn, but I don't think it's really worth it. I'm just going to take the KO on the Tinglu, because if my opponent wants to be able to do it again, they're going to have like recovery card plus like a Lucamine to be able to like wipe more Pokemon off of my board. There's a Night Stretcher for the fighting energy. And then I think my opponent is probably just going to try to want to go for another Tinglu this turn. And then there's an energy attachment to Riolu, but the Tinglu is already attached to this turn. And there's just going to be a retreat, a Hex Maniac, and then, yup, another copy of Tinglu. Tinglu's going to take 2 prizes there, which is pretty unfortunate for me. And yeah, like this game's looking pretty close. I kind of have to now take a knock out of my opponent's active while also leaving my board not susceptible to kind of just getting bodied, because now my Mr. Mime is in range of that Hawlucha. So my opponent has something like a Scoop Up Net. They can Scoop Up Net Hawlucha, take a prize onto my Mr. Mime. But I'm thinking like, okay, I want to go for Blacephalon this turn just to be able to leave this big Tinglu in the active. My opponent does already have a bunch of stadiums in the discard pile, so they would have to find some way to recover them. There's 2 there. I got 2 in my discard pile, so I just used the Arven to grab pieces for my Blacephalon. And yep, go for the Wondrous Patch. And then I go for the attach the counter energy. And then I attach the Float Stone. And now I'm going to use Firework Bomb. And I believe I use this to knock out Sandygast, in case my opponent has like a way to retreat, and then use the bigger guy, oh my god, the big Sandcastle. I'm totally blanking out of statement, though I said it 10 times already. And then I'm just going to set up the Hawlucha and the Tyrogue to be victims of a blindside. So my opponent's just reading my cards like, okay, Blacephalon, yep, blah, blah, blah. You have to take a prize card, or he gets to do the thing again, which is pretty ignorant. Putting 12 damage counters on your opponent's board where like the highest HP Pokemon in the format's 240 is pretty nuts. So there's a Lucamine that's going to come down here. And I think this is going to be the misplay that is my opponent's going to be thinking about for a while. So my opponent grabs the Silent Lab, which, okay, would knock out my Mr. Mime on the bench. But they don't play the Silent Lab. They play an Artisan out of their hand to thin a Pokemon, which then means that all of my abilities are going to stay in play, because my opponent can't Lucamine and Hex Maniac in the same turn without playing Lieutenant Surge. But obviously that card was not played already. So my opponent, I think, recognizes their misplay, and then I think going into my next turn, I'm able to just kind of win from there. My opponent's not able to knock out my Blacephalon because now the Tinglu is stuck in the active, and he's very fat. My opponent tries to go for the Tyrogue KO, and I'm just going to move 3 to the Tyrogue, knock it out, and then put 12 on the Hawlucha, and that's going to be the end of round 3. All right, getting to the final round here at the Good Games. It is a Psychic Mirror, and my opponent's list is looking a little familiar. Funnily enough, I think, it's a couple cards off of my list, but I think a lot of the cards that are in my list are kind of preference, so you can definitely change a couple cards here and there, and I wouldn't be mad at you. But my opponent and I both get a kind of awkward starts here. I go for the Collect and Pass because my hand is not very good here, and my opponent's turn 1 is go for the Mysterious Tail and pass, and they get a Rescue Stretcher, which doesn't do anything. But they do have the follow-up Lily's Determination, which is very good. Oh, excuse me. Austin's going to grab a pretty good card of 8 hand, or pretty good hand of 8 cards. As you can tell, I've been recording for a while. I'm starting to lose my mind. But there's a Pokegear, and I think it's failed not grabbing anything. And then there's a Trainer's Mail. It's going to grab a Professor's Letter. And because Austin is kind of bricking here, I would have maybe liked to see them use the Professor's Letter like right away just to get 2 Psychic Energy out of the deck. That way you're not at risk of drawing the Psychic Energy on the following turn. We see an Ultra Ball here. Ultra Ball is going to grab, I would like for it to probably grab a Natu here, just because it's more important to get a stage 1 down than it is, or an evolution, than it is to get down something like a Boulder that can potentially attack for the next turn. Because, right, if I have Natu down, then I can evolve it into Xatu, because he does have an evolution incense in the hand. Then that Xatu can attach to the Boulder, draw 2 cards. Now you have a Natu going, but the Natu is also generating you advantage in those 2 cards. So I would have definitely liked to see this turn played out a little bit differently from Austin. He kind of is going to leave himself at a position where he's not building a lot of advantage. So going into my turn, I'm going to retreat into my Monkey Dory, evolve into Kirlia. I'm going to refinement into pretty much nothing. And then I think I'm just going to end up passing here. I'm thinking about cards I can play out of my hand so that I can avoid my opponent from KOing me. I'm going to go Float Stone to the active, and I don't want to give my opponent the Mysterious Garden, but like in hindsight, it was probably fine, but my opponent did just play a Trainer's Mail, and then I don't want to get rid of anything else in my hand. I have a Night Stretcher that doesn't grab anything. Blindside's very useful in the mirror to be able to mount comebacks, and then the Tulip is just going to sit in my hand. It's not going to boost my hand like a billion more cards, but yeah, Austin hits a energy retrieval here off of the Mew, which is not super useful in this scenario. But there's the Pokegear here. Pokegear is going to grab nothing, which is pretty unfortunate. So his Mews haven't been fantastic. And then whiffing on the Pokegear there is pretty bad as well. But yeah, looking at like his hand, right, there's an Evo Incense here. The Evo Incense could have been used to draw 2 cards, even if it's attaching something Mr. Mime, which sucks. Like, it's something. So here I get the Guzmahala off of the Pokegear, which is like kind of mid. It's not really going to help me for what I want to do on this turn, so I'm going to just trade it away. And I draw the Xatu, and then I draw, I think it's an Arven, which Arven is pretty solid here just to be able to get some more Pokemon out of my deck. So I'm looking, I grab an Earthen Vessel, and I grab, let's see, what do I grab here? I can go for Mimikyu, potentially with like a Nest Ball, but I don't think I have that in my hand. So I'm just going to grab 2 copies of Psychic Energy, and I think I'm forced here to go for the Mind Bend, which is pretty bad. So I get for the Mind Bend, go for the Inkay, and I did already use a Sportive Return, but I do have the Marnie for the following turn, and I'm just going to use my Monkey Dory here to put 60 damage counters on my opponent's Iron Boulder. So pretty unfortunate. I am down 3 cards from what my opponent has in their hands, so I can potentially avoid an attack, but the Scoop of Net off the bat is pretty good here. It's going to get a card out of the hand. It's also going to heal the damage off of the Boulder while also getting rid of Confusion. And yep, there is the Professor's Letter played for the 2 Psychic Energy. So I'm a little bit worried here that Austin is maybe overfilling his hand. And yeah, there is a Mysterious Tail. Mysterious Tail is going to grab Nest Ball. Nest Ball is going to grab something out of the deck. I would like it for it to be anything that can evolve. Okay, there we go. There's an Inkay. So, right, like if Austin's board here was now Natu plus Inkay, it's a lot scarier of a board because now he has to just pass here because he's not able to match my hand size, which is good for me because it's going to buy me a turn. I'm going to get to trade away a Giratina, and I'm going to use Heavy Ball. Heavy Ball is going to grab Frillish, which I don't think is especially useful here. And then I can just go for the Iono, I think. I'm thinking about benching the Frillish. Thinking about like, this is useful. I mean, it's probably eventually useful. I actually don't go for the Iono here. I think maybe my logic was there. I just want to keep my hand low. My opponent wasn't able to match my the Iron Boulder last turn. So like, why would they be able to do it this turn? So giving them a new hand does not seem optimal. So I opt not to do that. And that there is the Malamar. I would have definitely liked to see the Mr. Mime promoted here because my opponent is holding a U-turn board. And unfortunately for my opponent, Malamar has 2 retreat cost. So that is another misplay there that I think that, you know, with the usage of Mr. Mime there, the U-turn board would have been able to retreat later in the game off of the Mr. Mime. And Austin could have gotten an attack in the turn earlier. And there's a Tulip. The Tulip grabs 2 psychic energy back. And then, yep, the Boulder's going to knock out my guy. I'm going to put that U-turn board back into my hand. I'm just kind of looking. Okay, my opponent's got 5 cards in the hand, so maybe here I'll be able to mount some sort of comeback. I'm going to attach my U-turn board to my Inkay, which I'd never want to attach it to Natu, because if I want to use my TM to be, or my psychic timepiece, mysterious timepiece, strange timepiece. If I want to use my strange timepiece to de-evolve my Xatu into a Natu, I don't want to have that U-turn board there, because then I can't attach the blind side. But it's pretty useless on Frillish, because Frillish is 3 retreat costs. It's a fat boy. And then my Float Stone is already on my active Kirlia, so I was clowning Austin for doing the same thing that I just did. But one, my Inkay is still an Inkay, but also there's not a better target on my board for U-turn. There is a better target on his board for a U-turn, so yep, that's true. So I get a Mimikyu here. So Mimikyu is pretty solid. It does have low HP, which I am worried about my opponent getting a potential Blacephalon onto my board. But this Mimikyu is the only thing I really have to be able to knock out Boulder back. I'm going to take the knockout on the Boulder there. And thankfully, this puts me down to 4, and my opponent's already at 4. So if my opponent does take a knockout this turn, they will be in that dreaded Blacephalon turn. And here's where the Giratina comes down. A Recycle Energy is going to get attached, and then Malamar is going to attach a Psychic Energy to it. So here, we see the end, right? So here, I would have... Okay, my opponent has a Floatstone hand. I don't know if I had got that at the start of the turn or if I got that off the trade. But this wouldn't have been a problem if we just had the Mr. Mime in the active with the U-turn board, because then potentially you could have got off a Tina attack if you drew something like a Patch or maybe like a Raihan off of the trade. So then, you know, also there is a Valley in play. Unfortunately, the Valley's not going to do it because he's going to need 1 more Psychic Energy to be able to attack. So it's going to buy me another turn to do something here. So I do have an open bench an open bench spot to potentially get down another attacker. So I think here I whiff on an attacker, actually. I'm going to grab Mr. Mime, which I don't think is especially useful here. So I go for trade, and then I go for Shining Arcana. I whiff an attacker off either of those. So here I'm just going to go for the Frillish. It's going to get some more damage on my opponent's board. If my opponent wants to chip into my Frillish, I can potentially go like Monkey plus Dark Energy and then start moving some damage counters over. My opponent does have a Natu with 40 HP. So I'm going to draw 4 cards out here off of the end my opponent, or the Iono my opponent plays. One of the hand disruption supporters. My opponent does draw that Zacian, which can be pretty nice to be able to get another attacker into play. There goes a Psychic on a Zacian. Again, like this turn would have been a guaranteed attack because the Mr. Mime would have been retreated into the Tina. The Tina could have put an attack down. So now here with my full bench, I'm just going to take the turn to set up Blacephalon. I think that if my opponent does have a boss's order to knock out my Blacephalon, it would be a pretty unfortunate, but with the big hand I have, I would be able to recur it pretty easily. So now my opponent's kind of stuck with a Malamar in the active, and I'm item locking him. So even if he wants to go for like a hand disruption card, like it's kind of fine. I have Shining Arcana on my board. I have Xatu on my board. So I have a lot of ways of netting card advantage. And then if my opponent ever wants to like do the scary thing and taking a prize to further his game, then my Blacephalon gets to just come up and it does something, right? He's got 4 damage counters on Malamar. If he attacks with a Tina, 4 damage counters have to go somewhere, right? So he can never put it on like Mime or Kirlia or Xatu. So now this is a pretty scary spot for him, because now I can just kind of leave this Tina in the active the entire game and just kind of Blacephalon around it. Go for a Shining Arcana. I don't know if I get anything especially useful off of that. Unfortunately, I was going to go for like a Guzma onto the Kirlia and then like KO more stuff on the board. But Kirlia is like one of the main things I want to KO. My opponent already has a bunch of stuff on the board, so I don't really care if he has like a Malamar in play. So I go for Hex Maniac here, and I think this is actually a misplay here. I think I should have KO'd Kirlia, and then so I would have 4 damage counters left, and I could have put 4 damage counters on Malamar. That way Malamar has 8 damage counters on it, and then I could have used the Giratina to put itself back on the bench with Distortion Door, knock out the Malamar, and then I get 1 more damage counter on like Xatu. So then that way on the following turn, I can like blindside this Xatu if the Zacian somehow gets healed. So slight misplay from me there as well. I don't think it ended up mattering too much, but that is a slight optimization I could have made, right? So My opponent goes for the reset stamp. Thankfully, I do have my big bad Guardy on the board as well. So that's going to help me net a little bit of card advantage on the following turn. So let's see. There's a nice search that's going to come down for Boulder. And like, I don't really care if Blacephalon gets knocked out. I'm in like such a good spot. My opponent's going to go to 2 prize cards. We both don't have a ton of cards in hand, and I go for the Shining Arcana there. I think I probably should have gone for the Hand Disruption first, just in case my opponent wanted to use the blind side on me, but I don't know. I haven't seen... I mean, my opponent does play the Nazi takes an extra prize, so I just have to assume that there's a blind side there. So yeah, I asked my opponent's got 4 cards in hand. I could potentially just go for the 1 prize and a 1 prize, and if I do bench like a Mr. Mime, then I should be pretty safe. I go for the Training Court. Training Court's going to add back an energy to my hand, and I'm just thinking about, okay, yep, I can probably just go for the Boulder. Boulder can KO Tina here, and I draw the Ball Search card to be able to get Mr. Mime in play. And then I've got 4 cards in hand. I need to go to 3. So what do I play here? I'm going to assume that was N because we will shuffle their decks. I draw 2, my opponent draws 2, and then I go for the Adjusted Horn for the KO. So my opponent here has to have a lot, right? I have this Mr. Mime in play, so my opponent cannot go for a blind side, but also I have no damage counters on any one of my Pokemon. So my opponent would have to have the Giratina Ping, which Giratina is in the discard, right? But then my opponent would have to go like, they don't have Malamar in play, so they would have to have like Raihan to Natu, and then... or to Xatu, and then Xatu attached to itself, and then attach for turn, and then Devo, and then have Blindside, right? So that's 5 cards with a 2-card hand, so it's essentially impossible. My opponent does have a Curlia down, so I mean, that is something, but if my opponent just takes a knockout here, like the game is pretty much just over. There's a Field Blower on the Float Stone and the Training Court, which is pretty bad because I'm pretty low on energy here. And if my opponent pieces a knockout together, then if I whiff, I just lose. But fortunately for me, my hand is Guzma Dark Energy, so I'm just kind of waiting for my opponent to like play all their cards out. I don't know if they're playing like another random hand disruption card, so you never know. You don't want to count your chickens before they hatch, right? So I'm just waiting. Boom, knockout, I promote, and then I'm just going Psychic Energy to the Mimikyu, and then attach a Dark Energy, and then Guzma, bring up anything. And then I'm copying the Zacian's attack, which is going to do 120 to kill anything. And that's going to be the game. I'm going to go 4-0 at the full group psychic event with the third iteration maybe, of the winning list from full grip. But yeah, this deck's super broken. Thank you guys for watching. This has been like over an hour of yapping GLC marathon. So meet me for the next one in 2 weeks. So please leave a like and subscribe. This is a lot of work to get done, but I do really enjoy this format. And yeah, I'm going to spread the GLC propaganda if I have to. So I'm going to go not talk for like 5 hours. This was a lot.